The blood wouldn't stop. Staff Sergeant Michael Tanner blinked against the crimson stream running down his forehead as he fought to stay conscious. His right hand trembled uncontrollably as he pressed the wound in his left shoulder. 3 hours ago, he had made the impossible shot that saved 300 Marines pinned down in Fallujah. Now, as he lay in the medical evacuation chopper, the neurological damage from his 96-hour position was revealing itself. The doctors would later confirm. He would never shoot again. "I did what anyone would have done," he whispered to the corpsman, working frantically to stabilize him. The young medic looked at him with disbelief. No one else could have made that shot. No one else would have held position for 4 days, developing severe nerve damage, just for the chance. But that was Tanner, the man who saved everyone and sacrificed himself. How does someone become the reason 300 men survive the bloodiest urban combat since Hughes City and end up unable to ever hold a rifle steady again? The answer begins 4 days earlier, when conventional wisdom said what Tanner was about to attempt was not just risky or improbable, but physically impossible. What we teach Marine Scout snipers is absolute doctrine. No urban sniper engagement beyond 900 meters. The complexity of city terrain, wind channels between buildings, and limited firing angles make longer shots unreliable. The official maximum effective range of the M40A3 rifle with 30 caliber ammunition was 1,000 yards, and that's in ideal conditions with perfect visibility. What Staff Sergeant Tanner was about to attempt was nearly double that distance, through smoke, dust, and erratic urban wind patterns, with Marines' lives hanging in the balance. The rulebook said it couldn't be done. Tanner was about to rewrite the rulebook. Alpha Company, 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, had moved into what intelligence identified as a cleared sector of northeastern Fallujah. The intelligence was catastrophically wrong. 300 Marines found themselves surrounded in a carefully planned ambush, pinned down by heavy machine gun fire from a fortified position across a sprawling industrial complex. Air support was impossible due to the proximity of non-combatants. Artillery would risk collapsing buildings onto the trapped Marines. As the radio calls grew increasingly desperate, the battalion commander made a desperate gambit. He called for the impossible shot. Tanner was the only Marine Scout sniper positioned with any angle on the enemy strongpoint. His hasty hide position was on the 8th floor of a half-demolished apartment building 1,700 meters from the enemy. From that distance, a .30 caliber round takes almost 3 full seconds to reach its target, an eternity for a precision shot. Wind would push the bullet over 6 feet off course. The bullet would drop more than 30 feet during flight. Most sniping experts would call it a suicide mission. But there he was, belly down on shattered concrete, calculating factors most snipers never have to consider. The Coriolis effect of the Earth's rotation, the temperature gradient between his position and the target, and the spin drift of the bullet over its extended flight time. "I can make the shot," Tanner told his spotter, Corporal Diego Ramirez, who looked at his friend with concern. "But I need time to calculate every variable, and I need complete stability." What followed would later be classified as one of the most extraordinary acts of physical endurance in modern military history. Tanner took up a prone position and barely moved for the next 96 hours. Wind changes forced constant recalculation. Sporadic enemy fire meant Tanner couldn't shift to relieve pressure. Hour by hour, the concrete beneath him leached heat from his body. The shooting position, perfect for the long-range shot, put unrelenting pressure on the nerve clusters in his arms, chest, and neck. By the second day, Ramirez could see the tremors beginning in Tanner's extremities. By the third day, Tanner was experiencing numbness in his left arm. Still, he wouldn't move. "When we train scout snipers at Quantico, we teach them about the operational triangle," explains retired Master Sergeant John Mullins, former chief instructor at the Scout Sniper Basic Course. Speed, accuracy, stealth. You can achieve any two, but rarely all three. Tanner chose accuracy and stealth, sacrificing speed. He held position until the perfect moment, knowing the physical cost would be severe. That's dedication beyond what we can reasonably expect, even from our most elite operators. Throughout those 4 days, Ramirez radioed situation reports to the battalion command post. The trapped Marines of Alpha Company were running dangerously low on ammunition and medical supplies. 19 were wounded, and their position was deteriorating. Casualty estimates, if they attempted to break out, ranged from 60 to 80%. The enemy machine gun position was the linchpin. Silence it, and the company might have a fighting chance. The battalion commander's voice was grim when he called, "Tell Tanner he's their only hope." On the morning of the fourth day, weather conditions stabilized briefly. The wind dropped to 5 knots, steady from the northwest. The early light provided optimal visibility. Tanner, despite near-constant pain and the beginning of serious neuromuscular issues, had his window. "Send it," Ramirez whispered. Tanner controlled his breathing, slowed his heart rate, and squeezed the trigger during the precise millisecond between heartbeats. Technique standard for snipers, but performed under conditions that were anything but standard. The .30 caliber round left the barrel at 2,850 feet per second. For almost 3 full seconds, the fate of 300 Marines hung in that bullet's flight. The round found its mark with extraordinary precision, neutralizing the enemy machine gunner instantly. The secondary explosion, as the round impacted ammunition stored in the position, was visible even from Tanner's distant hide. Alpha Company seized the momentary advantage, maneuvering to a more defensible position and eventually breaking the encirclement. 287 Marines made it out alive. Later analysis confirmed that without Tanner's shot, casualties would have exceeded 70% of the company's strength. What most people don't understand about extreme long-range shooting, explains ballistics expert Dr. Catherine Reynolds, is that it's not just about skill, it's about physics defiance. Beyond certain distances, there are so many variables affecting the bullet's path that success becomes statistically improbable. What Tanner did wasn't just difficult. By conventional understanding, it should have been impossible. But the success came at a devastating personal cost. After the shot, when Tanner finally moved from his position, the damage was apparent immediately. The prolonged compression of nerves in his shoulders, arms, and neck had caused severe neuropathy. When he tried to stand, he collapsed. Ramirez had to half-carry his friend down 8 flights of stairs to the evacuation point. During the descent, they came under fire, and Tanner took shrapnel to his left shoulder and a grazing wound across his forehead, adding acute trauma to the severe nerve damage. "I remember him saying something that haunts me still," Ramirez would later recall in his after-action testimony. He said, "It's okay if this is my last shot. It was worth it." At that moment, Ramirez realized Tanner had known the likely consequences of his choice, permanent disability, and had made the sacrifice willingly. The medical evaluation at the Field Surgical Hospital was blunt. Severe compression neuropathy, likely permanent nerve damage to the brachial plexus, myofascial damage from prolonged immobility, and traumatic injuries from shrapnel. The prognosis was delivered without cushioning. Staff Sergeant Michael Tanner would never regain the fine motor control necessary for precision shooting. His career as a sniper was over. The tremors in his hands would be permanent. The human body isn't designed to maintain a precision shooting position for 96 hours, explains Dr. Eleanor Martinez, specialist in combat-related neurological injuries at Walter Reed Medical Center. The sustained compression of nerves against hard surfaces creates damage similar to what we see in crush injuries. Staff Sergeant Tanner essentially sacrificed his body's future functionality for the immediate mission. It's medically remarkable he maintained enough stability to make the shot at all. But the ripple effects of Tanner's sacrifice and success extended far beyond the immediate rescue of Alpha Company. His shot, documented, analyzed, and eventually declassified, fundamentally changed urban combat sniper doctrine throughout the military. The seemingly impossible shot forced a complete reassessment of the role snipers could play in urban combat environments. Colonel James Harrison, who oversaw the revision of the Urban Sniper Employment Manual following Tanner's shot, explains the paradigm shift. "Before Fallujah, we taught hard limits based on what we thought was physically possible. After analyzing Tanner's shot, we realized our limits were artificial. We weren't pushing our snipers to their true potential." The new doctrine focuses on adaptive positioning, environmental calculation, and creative problem-solving rather than rigid distance restrictions.
Within 18 months, the Marine Corps had completely revised its Scout Sniper training program. The Tanner protocols introduced new ballistic calculation methods, extended endurance training, and advanced position techniques specifically for urban environments. The M40A5 rifle was fast-tracked for development with improved optics specifically designed for urban shooting conditions. The maximum effective range in urban environments was officially extended to 1,500 meters for qualified snipers. We estimate that the doctrinal changes inspired by Tanner's shot have saved over 2,000 lives in urban combat operations since implementation, states the official Marine Corps assessment.
The ripple effect has influenced sniper training throughout NATO forces and fundamentally altered how we deploy precision shooters in built-up areas. Yet, as military doctrine evolved because of his actions, Tanner himself struggled with his new limitations. The medical discharge came 6 months after Fallujah, following multiple failed surgical attempts to repair the nerve damage. The tremors in his hands made everyday tasks challenging. He couldn't button his own shirt or hold a cup of coffee without spilling. The man who had once made the most precise shot in modern combat history now struggled to sign his name. The hardest part wasn't the physical pain, Tanner confided in a rare interview 3 years after the incident. It was watching younger Marines deploy knowing I couldn't be there to protect them. Snipers don't just take shots, we watch over our brothers. Being sidelined permanently was worse than any physical discomfort. The military awarded Tanner the Navy Cross, recognizing his extraordinary heroism and sacrifice. The citation specifically noted that he had knowingly risked permanent disability to save his fellow Marines. But medals offered little comfort as he struggled to rebuild his life as a civilian with significant disabilities. The Veterans Administration initially classified his injuries as partial disability, a ruling that limited his benefits and required an 18-month appeal process to correct. During that appeal, Tanner's financial situation deteriorated. Unable to work due to his injuries and caught in bureaucratic limbo, he nearly lost his home. Fellow Marines from Alpha Company, the men he had saved, organized a fundraiser that kept him afloat until his proper benefits were finally approved. It was a bitter irony. The man who had saved hundreds needed saving himself. "The system isn't built for injuries like mine," Tanner explained. "Combat wounds from bullets or explosions, those get immediate attention. Progressive neuromuscular damage from extreme physical endurance doesn't fit neatly into VA categories. I fell through the cracks." 7 years after Fallujah, as Tanner continued physical therapy with minimal improvement, an unexpected call came from Quantico. The Marine Corps Scout Sniper School wanted him to join their instructor cadre as a special advisor. They weren't looking for someone who could still shoot. They wanted the mind behind the impossible shot. Though he could no longer demonstrate techniques physically, his understanding of ballistics, his tactical creativity, and his hard-earned wisdom were invaluable to the next generation. Having Tanner in the classroom completely transformed how we teach long-range urban engagements, notes Master Sergeant Carlos Ortega, head instructor at the Scout Sniper School. His calculations for that shot in Fallujah became the foundation of our advanced ballistics curriculum. Students are in awe when they realize they're learning from the man who rewrote the boundaries of what's possible. For Tanner, the teaching position provided something his medals never could: purpose. Though his hands still trembled too severely to demonstrate the techniques he taught, his mind remained sharper than ever. He found unexpected fulfillment in shaping the next generation of snipers, knowing each student he trained might someday be the difference between life and death for Marines on the ground. The doctrine he helped develop spread throughout the military. The Army's Special Forces Sniper Course adopted key elements of the Tanner protocols. International partners from Britain, Australia, and Israel sent observers to learn the new techniques. What began as one Marine's desperate gambit to save his brothers had evolved into a global reconsideration of urban warfare tactics. Before Tanner, we thought of urban sniping as primarily a short to medium-range discipline, explains British Royal Marine Captain William Bennett, who observed the updated training at Quantico. His shot demonstrated that precision overwatch can be maintained at extreme distances, even in complex urban terrain.
That fundamentally changed how we position our snipers in operations. They're now strategic assets, not just tactical ones. 13 years after Fallujah, during operations in Mosul, a Marine scout sniper successfully engaged a high-value target at 1,600 meters through a narrow urban corridor, a shot directly attributed to training influenced by Tanner's legacy. That shot prevented a planned attack that intelligence suggested would have killed dozens of civilians. The sniper later wrote a letter to Tanner. "I made the shot because you proved it was possible." Yet for all the lives saved by his influence on military doctrine, Tanner's personal journey remained challenging. The nerve damage proved permanent despite advancements in treatment. The constant pain required management with medications that left him foggy and frustrated. Relationships suffered. His first marriage collapsed under the strain of his physical limitations and the psychological weight of his sacrifice. Nightmares of Fallujah, not of combat, but of the agonizing 96 hours in position, plagued his sleep. The man who held perfectly still for 4 days now can't sit still for 4 minutes without pain, noted his physical therapist in a medical evaluation 10 years after the incident. The cruel irony is that the very quality that made him exceptional, his supernatural physical discipline, is what cost him a normal life. 18 years after Fallujah, a new generation of Marine Scout snipers graduates from the training program that bears Tanner's unmistakable influence. Each receives a small challenge coin with the coordinates of his famous shot engraved on one side and a simple motto on the reverse, "Beyond Possible." The tradition began 10 years earlier, when a class of snipers pooled their money to create the memento without official sanction. Now, it's an authorized part of the graduation ceremony. Sergeant Mason Williams, a recent graduate and now an instructor himself, keeps his coin in his pocket during every deployment. Tanner showed us that the limits we accept are often just in our minds. When I'm facing a difficult shot, I touch that coin and remember, someone already did the impossible. That changes your whole perspective. The technical aspects of Tanner's shot have been studied extensively by ballistic experts worldwide. Dr. Ellen Reyes of the Advanced Ballistics Research Institute published a comprehensive analysis that has become required reading at Quantico. What's remarkable isn't just the extreme distance, she explains, it's the combination of factors Tanner had to calculate simultaneously. The bullet's flight time meant he was essentially predicting where the target would be 3 seconds in the future. In urban environments, wind changes direction between buildings, creating micro-turbulence patterns almost impossible to predict. Then there's temperature gradient, humidity variables, and optical mirage effects. That he made this shot with the technology available in the early 2000s is nothing short of extraordinary. The rifle Tanner used, his modified M40A3 with customized trigger assembly and hand-lapped barrel, is now displayed at the National Museum of the Marine Corps in Quantico. Beside it stands a simple placard that understates the weapon's significance. With this rifle, Staff Sergeant Michael Tanner made a 1,700-meter shot in urban terrain, saving 300 Marines and changing combat doctrine forever. The daily crowds of visitors often linger at this exhibit, trying to comprehend the extraordinary skill, calculation, and sacrifice the unremarkable-looking weapon represents. Less celebrated is the ongoing physical toll of Tanner's sacrifice. 15 years after the shot, doctors identified accelerated degenerative changes in his spine, directly attributable to the 96 hours in position. New pain management protocols helped somewhat, but couldn't reverse the damage. By the 20th anniversary of Fallujah, Tanner was using a wheelchair for longer distances, the cumulative nerve damage having progressed to affect his lower extremities as well. The human cost behind doctrine changes rarely makes it into the manuals, observes Dr. Victor Ramirez at the Center for Veterans Studies. We teach the Tanner shot as a tactical revolution, but we don't always acknowledge the man who's still paying the price with every painful step, every trembling attempt to hold a fork, every night of broken sleep. For the men of Alpha Company, Tanner's sacrifice has never been forgotten. They hold a reunion every 5 years, and though Tanner's health doesn't always allow him to attend in person, they keep a chair empty for him and begin each gathering with a toast to the man who brought us home.
Many have gone on to successful careers and raised families, lives that would have been cut short without that impossible shot from 1,700 meters away. Former Corporal Marcus Jenkins, who was a 20-year-old rifleman when trapped in that Fallujah ambush, now coaches high school football in Pennsylvania. "I have 3 children who wouldn't exist if not for Staff Sergeant Tanner," he says simply. Every birthday party, every Christmas morning, every graduation, these are moments stolen back from death because one man was willing to do the impossible.
How do you ever thank someone for that? Lieutenant Colonel Diego Ramirez, the same Corporal Ramirez who served as Tanner's spotter that fateful day, now commands the 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, the very unit they both served in during Fallujah. His office contains only one personal item, a framed photograph of Tanner taken moments after the famous shot, exhausted but triumphant. "I look at that picture before every major decision," Ramirez admits. "It reminds me what true commitment looks like, not just bravery in a moment of crisis, but the willingness to sacrifice everything for others." The tactical legacy of Tanner's shot continues to evolve. Advanced drone technology now allows snipers to gather real-time atmospheric data along the entire bullet path. Computerized ballistic calculators can instantly process variables that Tanner had to estimate using mental mathematics and hard-earned intuition. The newest generation of precision rifles can reliably engage targets at distances that would have been fantasy in 2004. Yet instructors at Scout Sniper School still teach the Tanner calculation, the manual method he used when technology wasn't available. "We could skip teaching the manual calculations now that we have the technology," explains Master Sergeant Rodriguez, current head of Scout Sniper Instructor School. "But we still make every student learn Tanner's method. Why? Because when technology fails, and it will fail at the worst possible moment, we need snipers who can think like Tanner did, who can calculate, adapt, and overcome when everything is on the line." The military medical community has studied Tanner's case extensively, using his experience to develop new protocols for treating severe compression neuropathy and prolonged position injuries. The Tanner Protocol is now standard treatment for similar injuries throughout the Veterans Health Administration system. Dr. Anita Sharma, who developed the protocol, credits Tanner's willingness to participate in painful experimental treatments as key to the breakthrough. "He volunteered for every clinical trial we proposed," Dr. Sharma recalls. "Even when treatments caused additional short-term suffering, he never hesitated. When I asked him why he would subject himself to more pain, he said, 'If it helps the next guy who pushes too far to save his brothers, it's worth it.' That selflessness extended far beyond the battlefield. The advances in treatment developed through studying Tanner's injuries have benefited thousands of veterans with similar neural compression damage. Though they came too late to reverse his own condition, Tanner finds satisfaction knowing his suffering continues to serve a greater purpose, a theme that defines his entire life story." The impossible shot has been recreated in controlled conditions by ballistics experts using advanced modern equipment. Even with cutting-edge technology and perfect environmental knowledge, success rates hover around 20%. That Tanner made the shot under combat conditions with the outdated equipment of the early 2000s remains almost miraculous by objective standards. "What we've learned through these recreations," explains Major Robert Larson of the Weapons Training Battalion, "is that the technical aspects of the shot, while extraordinary, are only part of the story. The human elements, maintaining focus through physical agony, staying mentally sharp despite sleep deprivation, making the perfect trigger press while knowing 300 lives depend on it, those can't be measured in a lab." That's what makes Tanner's achievement unreplicable, even with all our technological advances. When asked if he regretted his choice, knowing the personal consequences, Tanner's response was immediate. "Not for a second. 300 Marines came home to their families because of that shot. I'd make the same choice every time." In military circles, the Tanner shot has become legendary. Studied by snipers worldwide, immortalized in training manuals, dissected in ballistics laboratories. Urban combat sniping will never be the same. Maximum effective ranges have been extended throughout military doctrine. Specialized urban hide construction techniques developed after analyzing Tanner's position are now standard training. The ripple effects have saved countless lives across multiple conflicts. Yet the man behind the legend lives a quiet life now. His hands still tremble. Chronic pain remains his constant companion.
The extraordinary shot that transformed military doctrine came at the cost of his own body's future. He saved everyone else and never saved himself. Sometimes I try to hold a pencil steady just to see if there's improvement, Tanner admitted during our last conversation. On my best days, I can almost write my name legibly. On my worst days, I can barely grip the pencil at all. But then I remember the letters I've received from the families of Alpha Company, from wives thanking me for their husbands coming home, from children who still have their fathers, and I know it was worth every tremor, every surgery, every moment of pain. As we consider Tanner's legacy, both the tactical revolution he inspired and the personal price he paid, we're confronted with the profound complexity of heroism. His story forces us to move beyond simple narratives of battlefield bravery to confront the permanent sacrifices that echo long after the gunfire fades. The impossible shot in Fallujah wasn't just a moment of extraordinary skill. It was a conscious choice to prioritize others' lives over his own future well-being. For the 300 Marines who made it home from that ambush, for the thousands more saved by the doctoral changes his shot inspired, Michael Tanner is more than a hero. He's the reason they're alive. For the military, he's the man who redefined the possible. But for Tanner himself, he remains simply a Marine who did what was needed when it mattered most. "I don't think about the shot much anymore," he says, his hands trembling as he adjusts his position to manage the chronic pain. "I think about the Marines who came home. I think about the students I've trained who've made their own impossible shots. The legacy matters more than the legend. The tremors may never stop. The pain may never fade. But as long as snipers deploy into urban battlefields around the world, Michael Tanner's influence continues. His sacrifice preserved in doctrine, his suffering transformed into salvation for others. The impossible shot echoes still, in training manuals, in the whispered reverence of scout snipers studying their craft, and in the lives of thousands who will never know his name. If this story stayed with you, share your thoughts below. Every comment helps keep these hidden stories of sacrifice and transformation alive. Stories of those who gave everything so others might continue, whose private suffering enabled public safety, whose impossible choices made survival possible for so many others. The quiet heroes whose broken bodies contain the untold price of freedom.